Okay, hope it's working. So good evening, or everyone. As Jiri just introduced me, I'm Vinny. I work here in Berlin at Home, and just like a brief introduction, I did like a front-end development there, mainly focused in Vue. And this talk is about like a Vue 3 that has been just like released, and specifically about Suspense. So I would say one of the most exciting and new features in Vue 3 is like composition API. That's like was the buzz one. But I decided to talk about Suspense because it's also like something that excites me about Vue 3. So as I mentioned, like Vue 3 has just been like released, I would say a month ago. I first like wrote about Suspense, I think around 2 months ago. So I just like kind of like update a bit like the examples and so on. Because of like the release, it introduced like some new things. And just as like a side note, Suspense still like experimental in Vue 3. Its API might change until we get like v3.1, but it's ready. We can use and play with it. So how the talk starts, live coding. To be honest, have never done like live coding before, but I think it's like a nice way to show and demo how Suspense works. And I would say it's like a bit from like a friend of mine that does really good like live coding session. He did one recently, and I think it was really good to learn from it. So I would jump to Code Sandbox here. I have like a sample project, and you can see the project just like renders like names in a list. It's a Vue 3 app, and it has like first this app.vue with like the items. The items are fetched from like this get items function. I won't get in details, but it's just function that waits like 2 seconds, but it could be like any API in a real application. And that's just like to simulate, that's like a quite standard thing that we do when developing apps. We fetch things, we show it to our user. And talking about once we fetch things, one of the first things that we do, or what we usually do, we also have like a loading state that's presented to the user when the page is loading. Because if I refresh it now, you see that's like okay, nothing's here, and then we show like the list of items. So the first thing we would do, we would have something like here, like is loading, could be computed whatever the way we want. And then once items are loaded, we would have this is loading as false, so it's not loading anymore. And then we would have something in our template. That would be, for example, let's put h1 here, whatever. If is loading, so when it's loading, we just say loading here, for example, and then we would have something like this here, and then those items would be like this, and then we have template. So now we have like, okay, the loading state that we wanted. So that's like one of the first things that we deal with when we are like fetching an external service or something like that that has like some time to be ready. The second thing we do is handling errors, basically. We can handle errors exactly the same way we do for the loading. Let's do is error here. I mean, it could be inside like a Vuex store. It could be like different ways to do it, but I'm just gonna keep this way here. And then like error message here, for example, it will start as empty. And if we go down, then we do something like a try catch here, try catch with the error. And then we also have a finally block. And what we do, okay, we move this fetch to the first part. If we have an error, we do this dot error. For example, get an error, doesn't matter. We could do like also computed, whatever. I'm gonna do it like separately here. We have error here, and then we move like it's loading to false, for example. And then we go to our template and do exactly like the same as we have for loading, but we do for error. So we do like if else, for example, is error, and then like I don't know, we print the error message here. Okay, that's it. Let me see. If else, wait a second. Oh, else if here, and then I also have to make it throw an error. So this special function here is like fail true here, and then it throws an error. So we have the loading and then fail to get items. That is like I would say most of the time that's what we build to handle like errors and loading states and so on. Imagine that now you have like well, okay, Safari is mad at me. So imagine that now you have like a different like I would say components or like a part of the application that needs loading and so on, and then you would have like a different of this, a lot of this like conditions in your template, in your view, for example. You could maybe create a wrapper, so on and so forth, and you can have it like in different ways. But that's more or less like how we handle it, and then as I said, you can have like different ways, so which means that yeah, we can play with it the way we want, and there's no like really like standard. And what I want to show here is like how we can approach it in I would say a suspense way or Vue 3 way. The first thing we do that's like quite an advantage is work in the items list to like introduce suspense, and we move all the fetch logic inside the items list component. So here we're gonna start using like the composition API, but let me start from here, from Vue. Let me get the items logic here, that's this service, and move it to this component. And then, okay, we don't need the props anymore, for example, because it's going to be fetched here inside. And then we're going to have a async setup method where items is this here, and items on planner, wait, get items. Items here. Okay, that's the first part of it. One advantage, I would say. So we have like the items component, like with its own, with the fetching and so on, everything side. So it has like its own purpose or on meaning or on function. And to use like this async setup, we can go to Suspense, and I'm going to show how then Suspense works. Basically, Suspense allow us to remove all this, allow us to provide some fallback while something is happening. Something's happening means like async component, or it could be like a async, for example, setup function in this case. And how it works, it allows us to write this part here, something like this. We have Suspense, and then we have our default template. That's this, and on the default template, we can put what is going to be loaded async. For example, wait, like this. And then we can provide a fallback to it, basically. Fallback. That in our case is our loading component. And then we can get rid of this logic. We just have to close suspense here. And we can get rid, okay, we could already see it working here. For example, if I refresh, you see the loading, and then you see the items. And we can get rid of all this code at the bottom, and we don't need to get item service here anymore. So we achieve basically like almost what we had before. The big difference here is, okay, we are not like handling the error yet, but what you can see, we have like the fallback as the loading part, and then we render our list items. And the advantage is like, okay, it's like, I would say a bit cleaner. We don't have to create like a different state for this component to handle this use case. And like all, like I would say, items logic is encapsulated in the items component. It could be done differently, but like the idea is to have like everything inside the items list component. So I mean, app.vue, for example, doesn't need to know how like items are loaded, or we don't have to build something on top of it. Of course we can, but we don't need to do so. And that's like the first, I would say, advantage or thing to play with Suspense. You can have like the fallback loading, which is cool, but we are not like handling the error anymore. And what I would like to show is, okay, what happens now if this get items here fails? Let's go back to, Jesus. Okay, let's go back to it. And then it basically breaks and doesn't handle our items list, and it doesn't provide us with like a good fallback to do so. You see like the error here. Okay, and now we have to handle this error. Well, what we could do instead is having the error logic in here. First thing we have to learn is how to actually we get errors that happen on like for example, async setup here. That's something that might be a bit new, but let's do it. Let's go back to what we had before. If we have like error, for example, we print the error. That's exactly what we had before. And then if else, we have suspense like handling. And then here, what we would have also like using setup method, we import ref and on error captured from Vue. So like this on error capture allow us to like capture errors that happen here, like in this component. And what happens, like, okay, we have the items list that throws an error. We don't handle this error, so we can capture the error like on the parent component. And that's exactly what we're gonna do here. And then we have like the error, for example, here. And then once we have like on error capture happens, we get error. And then we do something like this. This return true is just to say that we are handling the error. And then return error here. Okay. And now let's save. Okay, we can see that now, okay, we have, if sandbox loads, we have the loading, and the error is strong. We have like, okay, failed to get items, exactly what we had before. But then now we have like, I would say, well, a bit messy code here, because we have like, okay, some kind of boilerplate that we had before, then we are using suspense, and then it's like a bit messy. And then ideally, what I would like to have is like, okay, inside suspense, I'm already handling like the fallback, let's call it loading state. And I would like to have also like a error here or something like, I would say this code would be a way better if we wrote it like something like this, and we could handle the error inside. And that's exactly where I would like suggest to create like a wrapper for that and reuse it across your project. That's where suspense with errors get in. Okay, the component is already here, but let's go through it. So what it has is, okay, it has a slot. That's exactly what we would have here, like the error part. If we have error, we render this error slot, and otherwise we render the default on with suspense, and otherwise we handle the fallback. And then it has exactly the same thing here. We have like reference on error captured, exactly what we have here, and then we have like the error on error capture, and we handle the error inside. Just as a side, this is the new syntax. If you are using like setup method, you can just create like a script with setup next to it. You can import what you want inside, and whatever you export here, it's the same as doing like this return that I have here in the setup method. So this is like just the new syntax. I refactor it before, and it's also something worth mentioning. It's also like experimental to collect feedback, and it's most probably going to be finalized by Vue 3.1. So now with suspense with error that's ready, we can use it instead of having all this boilerplate code, and then we basically like abstract the whole error handling and so on. So what we can do is we can come here and we can get suspense with error. You can make it global, for example. Suspense with error. And then we have it here. Suspense with error. Then don't need it anymore. And we don't need to handle the error here. We can do suspense error here. And then what we basically do is we have our template, as I said before, like error here. And then we get the error return for us. And then we can move exactly the H1 that we had like on the top here, for example. And oops. And then it's done. And we don't need this line here anymore. We don't need to import this anymore. We can save. And then that's pretty much it. So now with like this, would say this wrapper, we have, okay, we have the default state, we have the fallback state that's the loading, and we have the error state. So if we now remove error, that we don't need it anymore. Have loading, and then we render like the items list here. So basically like we abstract all that, I would say, logic that could be done also with like other way of managing state, like state machines and so on, inside this suspense with error. It's not like a silver bullet for everything, but it makes your code like, as it's like standardized, basically. It's like suspense will be like in the docs, like well written. You can like, it's easy to like to share the understanding behind how your application is managing like loading, and like the error state here is like, okay, it's like an addition, but it follows like the same principle with like templates and so on. And you could play like differently. You could play like, okay, error like 404 or 500 or something like that. Instead of putting like the if inside, you could like create like I would say wrapper layers on top of that. And the last part is just like, okay, we could, as I showed like before, we could like also refactor it. This part of the code here, use like the new syntax. So we could do like this. We can remove it here. We can export this const here. We don't need to return items anymore. We don't need this line here as well. And that's pretty much it. The problem is that with like a code sandbox complaints, because okay, there's no like asyncs why you're using await, so on and so forth. But there's no problem with that. Let's just wait until it loads, and loading, and you see like it renders like exactly as we expected in the beginning. So this is like one approach of using like Suspense with errors. You can create like this boilerplate and use it throughout your whole application. We keep like the same behavior as Suspense, but we also introduce like this error approach, and we can do like whenever we have async setup, for example, something has to happen asynchronously to like create like a component. We can use Suspense to like show some fallback or some intermediate like let's say state until the component is like fully ready to be rendered. That's one approach, and that's like I would say the benefit that Suspense brings to us, a way to standardize this kind of loading state. Let me go back to the presentation. So that was like the live coding part. I hope it was not that, I would say, messy, and you could like understand where I wanted to go. I mean, I want to show like an approach, like how we would do it like in Vue 3, and how we could benefit from like Suspense and do it in Vue 2, and then how we can benefit with Suspense and Vue 3 to refactor it and make it, I would say, more readable and remove some magic from it. So, all in all, what I want to say is like, okay, Suspense can be used to show us fallback while async work is done in the main component. That basically like help us to get rid of the is loading stage that we most probably have like in a lot of our components and views. So a component can have multiple suspenses. So we could, for example, use here, we could, the ambulance. We could replicate it multiple times. Let me just try it here. This, and you see like two loading, and okay, it works. Another thing that you might have noticed, I don't have like a kind of a root div here, because Vue 3 you don't need like a single root element anymore. You can have like multiple like root elements, and that's exactly what happens here as well. Okay, error handling can be done on error capture hook. So what I showed here, so whenever an error happens, we can capture it like that. Vue 2 has like kind of like similar way of capturing errors, but it's not that common. And here's one way where we can capture the error. And once you return true, basically means, okay, this error has been handled in here. We don't have to propagate it to top or parent. We can create a wrapper for error handling. That's exactly what Suspense with error aims to do. It could be like different ways of doing it, but like we're handling error. As I said, we could get like, for example, the status code if like an API call, and then we could have like, okay, 404 or something like that, and we could have like different slots for each specific like error that we want. It would also make it like more transparent what happens like on 404, so on, so forth for that specific view. And another thing that I want to show is like, okay, Suspense works well with Vue router, and it's also like an option for loading screens, for example. And to show that, I'm just gonna open this repo here. This is repo, the link's there, but it has this item here, this application or whatever deployed, and it's like it has like two routes, like Suspense simple and Suspense route. And what I want to show you is, okay, it has basically like the router first to show there's no magic in the router. So it's basically, okay, two routes and two like components. Okay, and the thing is like, okay, on the app.vue we have the template default inside a suspense inside the view router, the router view, sorry, and it's like the template default, and the fallback is like a loading screen. And if our view, for example, has some async setup thing doing something asynchronously, we like, as it's just a component, the fallback will be rendered until the router view is ready, or which means our view is ready. So as we saw, like the suspense route has some async work to be done. So if I click here, I will see like the loading screen, this case like this stat. And then once it's done, I'm gonna see like this component rendered. And if I go back, okay, like suspense simple has no async setup to be done, and it renders like directly. So no waiting, no loading screen. Here I have loading screen because it has async work to be done. Here, no loading screen. It renders the component directly that has some suspense inside, some examples. And then like this link is available here. So like the last part, the last item here is like it works well with Vue router. It has some gotchas. I recommend you to play with it to like learn from those gotchas, but like you can have a problem if the user navigates while it's loading, for example. But if it's like just transitional, I would say part of your application, it works like fine. Here are the links for this talk. So first one is the code sandbox. It's exactly this one here. You can play with it if you want. The repo is this repo here. It also has like a link to the article where I talk about this approach. It was written, well, June, so it was not like Vue 3 was not ready. So I did some refactoring for the code sandbox. And the slides, those slides, if you want to like get the links as well, you can get it from here. And that's pretty much it from my side. So thank you very much.